Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of PB Ballers. I'm your host Albert, and today we'll talk about the KFA appointing Hwang Sun-hong as the interim manager of the men's senior national team for the March World Cup qualifiers against Thailand. Now, after Jurgen Klinsmann and his staff was fired for their disastrous Asian Cup, the KFA was initially going to appoint a domestic manager on a full-time basis, but after intense public backlash against the idea, it seems that Chung Mong-gyu and his minions at the KFA have decided to hire a domestic manager on a temporary basis to take over for the March games, and the plan is apparently to hire a more permanent coach in May who can take over for the June international window. For a little background information on Hwang Sun-hong, he's actually a pretty famous former KNT player. He's the guy who scored our first World Cup goal in 2002 against Poland, was a fixture in the national team from the 1990s to the early 2000s, and then he got into coaching. He's had a few pit stops in the K-League at Pohang Steelers, and most notably at FC Seoul from 2016 to 2018. He also made his way. He also made his way through the national team setup with the U20 teams, and now he's working with the U23s. And he most recently won a gold medal at the Asian Games, helping the likes of Kang-in, Seoryong-woo win military exemption. So he has a bit of a resume within the national team specifically. But to be honest, guys, if you ask most Korean football analysts, his record as a manager in general isn't the best. He isn't known as the most tactically adept guy or someone who is revolutionary in the way he coaches, and you don't have to be. But I don't think he necessarily has the best reputation in Korea. This is a quote from K-League fan favorite Dejan Demjanovic, who played at FC Seoul for a bit. He said, quote, Hwang had good tactical ideas, but his ability to manage the squad was zero. He thought of the team as his property. As soon as he took charge, he criticized the foreign players who were key players of the team. Hwang seemed to dislike players who received more attention than him. In the end, he brought the champions to the relegation zone in 1 year. Again, everyone has their own opinions, but I think most KNT fans would say that he doesn't really have a set system of play. He relies on the individual brilliance of many of his players, and I honestly think that's the main reason we even won gold at the Asian Games. It was because of the talent on the team, not because of Hwang's tactics. Now, people could have differing opinions, but I believe that is the main impression that we have of Hwang Sun-hong. Just a guy who's kind of honestly used his name as a player to become a coach. It's one of those things where, you see guys like Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard become managers, even though they're not tactically very good, just because of their names. And it's sad to see, but it is what it is in the world of football. However, in a nutshell, I think that Hwang Sun-hong taking over for just 2 games is okay because it's just 2 games and he knows the national team. I think he's worked with Lee Kang-in before with the U20 teams and with the U23. But the problem with this, guys, is that Hwang Sun-hong right now should be preparing for the Olympic qualifiers. The 2024 Paris Olympics are taking place soon, and on the men's football tournament, South Korea is in contention to qualify, but we haven't yet. And Hwang Sun-hong for a while has been preparing for those qualifiers, but what the KFA has done is taking him away from the U23 team and said, hey, Hwang, why don't you work with the senior team for a month in March, and then come back to the U23 team when you're done in April? I don't know many full-time jobs where you can take a whole month off, especially when you're preparing for a major tournament, and then come back and do just as good of a job as you would have if you had stayed. It's more mismanagement, in my opinion, by the KFA and Chung Mong-gyu. It's a way for Chung Mong-gyu to cover his behind after the PR disaster he had with the firing of Jurgen Klinsmann. There were other options to take over for the senior team for just 2 games, okay? You could have asked Chaduri, Jurgen Klinsmann's assistant, who sat on the bench with him at the Asian Cup, to take charge for 2 games. You could have asked former Vietnam manager Park Hang-seo, who isn't really working nowadays, to take over for just 2 games. I know Pak said it wasn't ideal for him to take over as the interim manager, but he would have been willing to do it if no one else was willing. There were some other unemployed Korean managers, Kim Do-hoon, who isn't, in my opinion, the best manager as a person or as a tactician, but again, for 2 games, guys, it's not that big of a deal. Why are you picking a man who already has a job? We can debate whether or not he deserves that job, but he is in the middle of a job and then in the middle of a very important task, a la qualifying for the Paris Olympics. In my opinion, guys, it just makes no sense to take him away from the U23 team. And it's more important because in South Korea, the Olympic Games are one of only two ways that these footballers can win military exemption. You can either win gold, silver, or bronze at the Olympics and get exempted from the military, or you can win gold at the Asian Games. If the U23 team possibly does not qualify for the Paris Olympics, that is on Chung Mong-gyu and the KFA's head for taking away their coach for a month. Again, it seems like this KFA is making decisions not based on the long-term well-being of our players or even football in general, but just based on how they can deflect public criticism away from the president and how they can set out the fires that they've been setting themselves for many years. My biggest fear is that Hwang Sun-hong does well in these two games and whoops Thailand, and that the KFA thinks to itself, oh, hey, why don't we just give him the job? You know, he's cheap, he knows the system, and he's probably not going to talk smack about the chairman. So, yeah, let's make him the permanent manager. That would reek of the FA in England giving Gareth Southgate the permanent job, because, in my opinion, Gareth Southgate is not a very tactically adept manager. And I think England has been going deep in tournaments despite Southgate, not because of him. And I think that they haven't won trophies because Southgate has been unable to adapt, especially in big moments like the Euro 2020 final. I think if we did hire Hwang Sun-hong, it's another Southgate situation where the FA is lazy and just picks a guy that they know instead of doing the hard, dirty work of researching candidates that would actually be a better fit for this position long term. And even if Hwang Sun-hong doesn't get the job, honestly, can we really trust the KFA to make the right decision in May and hire the right candidate? I'm not asking for the perfect manager. I know that whoever we hire is going to come with some warts because, again, the Korean national team job isn't the Germany job. It's not the France job. It's not the Brazil job. But it still should be desirable enough where if we did our research, we could hire someone with an actual footballing philosophy and somebody that can come in and whip these boys into shape. Because right now we all know that the locker room and the association is a total mess. Now, one positive is that I did talk to a man who's currently working in Paris, and he did actually work with Hwang Sun-hong and the U23 Korean team last year for a match, and he told me that he was impressed with how well disciplined the team was, especially at dinners. Hwang Sun-hong has reportedly implemented a bunch of team rules where there's a set dinner time, the senior and younger players eat together, and no one can finish and leave the table until the whole team is done, which isn't asking a lot, but something that never happened under Jurgen Klinsmann and led to ping pong gate as we know it. So if there is a silver lining, I guess it's that Hwang Sun-hong at least has the respect of these U23 guys and probably will command the respect of many of these national team players just because Hwang Sun-hong was a big name in South Korean soccer in the 90s and early 2000s. So I'm not really worried about him being considered a joke by the players from a personal perspective. That could be a good thing, especially because of the madhouse that was allowed to fester under Klinsmann. However, I think it would be a far cry for us to say that we're happy about Hwang's appointment as the interim manager. And like I said, the fear here is that the KFA gets lazy and watches us beat Thailand and says Hwang deserves a full-time job, which in my opinion, he certainly does not. And guys, we shouldn't underestimate Thailand. Asian teams across the continent have been improving year by year. We saw it at the Asian Cup. This Thai national team, I think, has a good chance to qualify in 2026. They gave the Saudi Arabians a tough game at their group stage match in the Asian Cup. And if we don't take them seriously, and if we keep fighting amongst ourselves, in my opinion, there's a real chance we tie or even lose against the Thais. There's no guarantees in Asian football anymore, guys. We have to take this more seriously. And I wish the KFA would take it more seriously. In my opinion, the best case scenario is that Hwang Sun-hong wins against Thailand in March, but he wins by a moderate scoreline, 2-0, 3-0. And the KFA does its due diligence, reaches out to many domestic and foreign candidates, and picks the one who has a footballing philosophy that can take us to greater heights as we ramp up to the 2026 World Cup, because I think we can all agree the way that they've been operating cannot continue if we want Korean football to survive and thrive. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. We've got some great content coming up. We're going to have a pod dropping soon with the excellent Korean football writer Steve Han. Jason and I will co-host that video, and we'll have Steve on to talk about everything related to the state of Korean football and the KNT. We're going to let Steve unload and go in hard. It should be a lot of fun, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you soon.